Different types, wear a deco, pants with stripes, cutaway coat, perfect fits, putting on the Ritz. Hey. Come on. Are you ready?
Mesdames et messieurs, garçons et filles, jokers of all ages, welcome to the Worst Wrestling Podcast. I am your host, Jack Lucena, aka the Fantasy Joker. You can find me every Saturday at 4:20 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, exclusively on YouTube and Spotify. This is a comedy-fueled, grassroots, fan-driven wrestling podcast, and I want to be the James Ellsworth of wrestling podcasts. I want to be king of the jobbers, you guys, and I need your help. I need your support out there. Mainly, I need your questions to help out the show, to help support the show. Please send in your questions and your ideas. You can be my EVPs out there. So send your questions to thefantasyjoker420@gmail.com. Or you can just hit me up on my socials at Jack Lucena. That's Lucenay. Again, thefantasyjoker420@gmail.com. Or hit me up at Jack Lucena. I just finished WWE Elimination Chamber with my morning coffees and my eggs and toast. Because, yes, it was at 5 a.m. start time, Eastern Standard Time. But that's okay. I had dad mode activated. I'm usually up around that time anyways. So for me, it wasn't that big of a deal. But it was fun seeing the Twitter reaction of a lot of sleepy-eyed people staying up or getting up early for this premium live event, which is still a weird thing that I'm getting used to. In my head, it's still called a pay-per-view, PPV. But I was up around 4:30, which was perfect. It was right in time for the pre-show. And I got to see Indy Hartwell and Candice LeRae versus the Kabuki Warriors. And you could tell right away that kind of regardless of what was actually planned for the event, that it was going to be a good event because the crowd was hot for a pre-show match. Indy Hartwell, the hometown hero, had a really great showing. So I really enjoyed her work in this match with Candice LeRae. Obviously, though, Kabuki Warriors still went over. LeRae ate the pin. There was a nice moment after the match for Indy Hartwell. So again, hot crowd right off the bat. And we start off hot with, most people are going to say it was the match of the night. For me, it was, I think, second. But the women's Elimination Chamber match was excellent. I really enjoyed Tiffany Stratton. I think she was obviously the MVP of the match. Very impressive. The crowd was into her also. They were chanting Tiffy time when she climbed up on the pod and did the swanton off of the pod. They were even chanting bullshit when she got eliminated, which I thought was interesting. And actually, that's a point where when the crowd is reacting in such a way, I almost wish that they would have kind of pivoted and maybe called an audible on the fly. Because the way that I would have structured just the actual match would have been different. First of all, obviously, I love Becky Lynch. But I think I'm just kind of over her in the title scene right now, and I want to see the fresh faces of, even though Bianca Belair was the title holder on SmackDown for so long, her versus Rhea Ripley is a huge matchup, and that's something that I would have loved to see her using the Chamber as an excuse to jump to Raw, also giving her a fresh scene. I think it would have been interesting to see Bianca Belair win that match, but they went with Becky Lynch to set up Rhea Ripley versus Becky. But even if I was staying with the same finish, kind of the way I got there would have been just slightly different. So I would have had Naomi still get eliminated first, and I know that kind of sticks in the craw of some people, but out of everybody in this match, she was the only one that really didn't have a thorough storyline beyond I just recently returned. And the way that she was eliminated by Tiffany Stratton, I thought was an excellent little setup for Tiffany. So that was nice. And what I also enjoyed was, Raquel Gonzalez looking strong. But here's where I would have had, again, they go through all the trouble of everyone's ganging up and Raquel Gonzalez gets eliminated ultimately. So have that happen and have Tiffany Stratton remain again in the match. And then even Liv Morgan, who ultimately was the last one eliminated because she had the storyline directly affiliated with Rhea Ripley. I would have had her and Tiffany Stratton be the last two there. I think it would have made more sense if you were going to have Bianca lose the Elimination Chamber to lose it to Tiffany Stratton. I think if you had Stratton eliminate Bianca Belair, it makes her look strong and continues to set up their potential WrestleMania match, which I think a lot of people are excited about and see coming. So that's kind of the one pivot and caveat that I would say is I would have had Tiffany Stratton last longer in the match, make it to the final three. You could still have done that kind of quick finish of Liv gets the pin on Tiffany Stratton, and then in the confusion, Becky Lynch takes advantage with the manhandle slam, or the whatever she calls the stupid move, the fucking the man bottom. So she hits her version of the rock bottom, gets the win over Liv in quick fashion. You could still do that finish. I just think it would have worked better had they had, like I said, as opposed to Bianca Belair. You could have still had Bianca Belair ultimately be the one to kind of eliminate Raquel Gonzalez by delivering the EOD earlier. So I just, again, it's like, that's my one caveat of, obviously with how the crowd was reacting, Tiffany Stratton would have been better to have been included through to the end of the match. But I mean, it's a small caveat. Otherwise, I think it was a really great match for the women and probably the highlight of the night for most people. For me, though, the highlight of my night was New Catch Republic versus the Judgment Day. I am just a huge fan of Pete Dunne and Tyler Bates. Those are kind of two of my guys in terms of, I just love their in-ring style, and especially the bruiserweight Pete Dunne, I think, so underrated. The finger stuff, I could watch him manipulate joints all day. His matches, his work is phenomenal. I loved a lot of the spots he was doing with Finn. They did the Birmingham Hammer, which was a callback to their time in NJPW and on the other side of the world, and with the guy that trained them. I forget his name, unfortunately, but then also where they're from in the UK and where they spent a lot of time training. I'd love seeing these two cast together. I would love to see them get a meaningful tag team championship run. I think most people agree that they should split those titles again. I kind of hate the idea of splitting titles usually, but tag titles I'm okay with. I would like to see two separate tag titles to see more teams getting elevated into tag team title matches. But otherwise, another great match. Judgment Day ended up going over, obviously. That was like the theme of the night, and I'll get to that kind of in my final recap at the end. The Grayson Waller effect, I mean, that was like, honestly, a 15-minute segment that could have been 30 seconds long. Austin Theory ate an awesome looking stomp, though, from Seth Rollins. I love the way he sold the stomp. He looked like a fucking exclamation point. That was really funny. And then the way Grayson Waller just kind of sat in the back, I was like, nah, I'm good. So that was a funny little bit. But again, 35 seconds out of a 15-minute segment you could have saved a lot of trouble. They're essentially setting up the tag match for Cody and Seth with The Rock and Roman, probably for night 1 at WrestleMania, I would assume. And then we got into the meat of the show, which was the men's Elimination Chamber match. And this is where it was a match. It was good. It had some spots I liked. Obviously, Kevin Owens was the highlight of the Elimination Chamber, even though he just kind of randomly was eliminated by Randy Orton, who was selling the fuck out of his back. Had people legitimately concerned for him. Not that I'm saying that he isn't dealing with maybe some kind of lingering pain, but to the degree that he is selling it in the match, like, he's obviously doing that on purpose. He's milking it. He's milking the crowd. He's milking us. He's a master seller, is that Randall Orton. But yeah, and then AJ Styles putting in a bid for Ultimate Hater of the Year, flying 30 hours across the world just to attack LA Knight in the Elimination Chamber and make sure he didn't win, setting up their potential feud going into WrestleMania. And then getting to the finish of the match, this is where, to me, it was just confusing, honestly. And this is where I, again, would deviate a little bit. The way it actually goes down, Logan Paul puts on the brass knucks, is showboating, eats an RKO out of nowhere, and is eliminated. I thought that bit was perfect because, pride goeth before the fall, and there's no one more prideful right now and egotistical than Logan Paul is in WWE, and I gotta say I kind of love it. But he eats that RKO from out of nowhere, eats the pin, he's eliminated, and it's down to Drew McIntyre and Randy Orton selling the shit out of his back. And Drew hits a spine buster, a mean looking spine buster. Randy can barely get up to the point he can't even get up to eat the Claymore for the finish. And Drew does the fucking thing again. Like, he's talked about, like, oh, I've learned and I've done this and I need this match and they just want it. Like, I hate when you build a character and an archetype of a character and then the character completely fucking ignores all the shit that you just set up. Like, he literally is standing there doing what for like 5 seconds while Randy Orton's grabbing at his knee pads? Like, why? Why is he just standing there? Like, the whole thing that you've kind of set up is that he would immediately just start kicking the shit out of his back and just put him in a fucking Boston crab or something and just end it. You know what I'm saying? But no. He doesn't show any viciousness. He stands there like a fucking Oompa Loompa and eats an RKO, and then Logan Paul kind of comes in out of nowhere and hits Randy Orton with the brass knucks, and that then Drew kind of drapes his arm over. He wins the match, but kind of in weak fashion, as opposed to learning his actual lessons and looking strong going into the Mania match, and having the perception that he's evolving, and actually, because he's a heel, he's not going to do these same stupid mistakes that cost him matches. And yeah, that's exactly what we saw when he ate that RKO. What the fuck? So that's just a pet peeve of mine in terms of like writing and booking, and that's regardless of, that's not just in WWE, that's just in any form of literature or canon or entertainment, is, again, when you set up your own character within the parameters of your own universe and then have that character essentially flaunt what you've built and for no reason, and to the point that it makes them look stupid. Like, why would you? It's lazy writing is what it is to me. So, and I get that it's set, now you've set up all these different feuds. You've set up, obviously, Logan Paul and KO still have their beef because that was unresolved. You have now Logan Paul and Randy Orton. You have LA Knight and AJ Styles. LA Knight still could be mixed in for that U.S. title again with having shit with Randy Orton going back. They had like a weird little interaction where LA Knight stood on top of Randy's cage. So I think most people out there, most smart fans, are expecting a multi-man match for the U.S. title at WrestleMania, and I think that is where we are headed. Probably all five of those guys that I mentioned, so Kevin Owens, Logan Paul, LA Knight, AJ Styles, Randall Orton, and then I assume a sixth guy who could end up being like a Bobby Lashley, or I would like to see Karrion Kross maybe get a spot. I know not everyone loves Karrion Kross. I really like him just as a human being, and so I root for him. And I think he has improved his character and kind of worked on things, and he's got beef with AJ Styles, and could kind of interact in that feud. So that I think could be interesting. But I think they're gonna get a 6-man, and it's ultimately gonna be probably like a ladder match or something like that. I think is what we get at WrestleMania. So ultimately, it's setting up things for WrestleMania. So I'm not gonna hate on it. The right guy won. I picked Drew McIntyre to win the match. But yeah, that was kind of the only thing that really stuck in my craw. And then the main event, Triple H. So people are like, oh, why is Triple H come out to announce this thing that could be on social media? Triple H comes out to do that on purpose because he knows that you can't just throw out your main event immediately after an Elimination Chamber. That would be doing a disservice to these women. So obviously you have a commercial break, and you have Triple H comes out and makes a small announcement, gets the crowd pop because they love the game, and then finally we get to the main event: Nia Jax versus Rhea Ripley. Pretty standard paint by numbers match for the most part. There was some high spots. I enjoyed Nia Jax with the homage to Rikishi with the stink face in front of Rhea Ripley's family. That was a nice heel moment. And then the announce table spot, Nia Jax really killed Rhea Ripley on the announce table. Samoan drop, elbow through the table, and then dragged her in the ring. Hits her with the Annihilator, which I thought was impressive. Because I think everyone and their grandmother knew Rhea Ripley was winning this match. So having her kick out of the Annihilator spot, just making her look that much stronger. And then ultimately the superplex and the riptide that leads to Rhea Ripley's win. And then, the shot with her family. I thought that was a really nice moment. WWE loves their moments like that. Rhea Ripley too, looking emotional pre-match, playing up the face kind of in this bizarro world role. But I think as soon as she gets back to Monday Night Raw, it's going to be back to business as usual, back to full heel Rhea Ripley promo. Because Dom is so hated, and Dom Mysterio is the most over wrestler on the entire roster and in all of wrestling, because this man can't get a sentence out without getting booed to shit. Doesn't matter where he is, doesn't matter the country, the city, the place, the face, it doesn't matter. Everybody's booing Dom Mysterio, and loud. So really enjoying the whole setup for WrestleMania. Rhea Ripley versus Becky Lynch, Tiffany Stratton potentially versus Bianca Belair. Again, we talked about the U.S. title picture. We've got Seth Rollins versus Drew McIntyre, Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns. Potentially on night one, we will also have the tag match, Rock and Roman versus Cody and Seth. Lots of things going on. The road to WrestleMania is officially kicking off, and I am excited for it. So the main event of Monday Night Raw, Gunther versus Jey Uso for the Intercontinental Championship. Gunther's held for something like 600 plus days now. Jey Uso did eat the L. His brother Jimmy came out, rang the bell, caused a distraction, and then, afterwards, the beatdown ensued. A couple of Uso splashes Jimmy to Jay. So setting up obviously reigniting the feud for the Usos heading into WrestleMania. Obviously, that was kind of left out in the cold with all of the stuff happening with the Bloodline. And Gunther, I don't know if they're going to go back to Gunther versus Jay necessarily at night one. Maybe they do. It seems like a lot of guys are, supposed to be pulling double duty on night one and night two of WrestleMania. So I don't know if Jay would also be having a match with Gunther and a match with his brother. I feel like he's going to probably get entangled in the feud with his brother. And so that obviously leaves Gunther open. And everyone is asking now, who should be the one to dethrone Gunther for the Intercontinental Championship? And it is my belief and also my heart pick that I just want to see Sami Zayn succeed on a main stage, get a major single title win. I think there would be a cathartic release also for fans, and Sami Zayn is just such a good representative of the WWE. The feuds there, you can then have a spinoff with Drew McIntyre. There's stuff there. There's interesting things that you can do with Sami Zayn. As much as I love Chad Gable, who was recently named underrated superstar of the year by Dave Meltzer / Wrestling Observer newsletter. I love Chad Gable, don't get me wrong. He's one of my favorite underrated wrestlers. But I really would prefer, I think, to see Sami Zayn. As much as I love, again, Chad Gable, I feel like his story with the Intercontinental Championship potentially would be more short-lived and more paint by numbers. I think you could do more interesting things with Sami Zayn, where, again, you can deflect off into his story with Drew McIntyre. Sami Zayn obviously also has, other relationships on the roster. Maybe him and Jey Uso have like a little friendly feud over the title. So all kinds of things that you could build up to having Gunther either reclaim his Intercontinental Championship or move on to the World Heavyweight Championship. The only other thing I would say is I wouldn't mind seeing Gunther just hold on to both. Have a run with the World Heavyweight title and Intercontinental title. I know that's not a very popular decision. I know a lot of people don't really like that. But the last time we had a true double champ, and when I say double champ, people are always like, oh, Roman Reigns, he put the belts together, because every time you get two world titles, that's what happens. I'm talking about two stark, contrasting individual main singles titles, aka either the US or Intercontinental Championship, which are considered the mid-tier working man's title, and the World Heavy title. Whether it is Roman's title or Seth's, you have to have a combination of both. And I really would like to see Gunther be the one to do that. I know Logan Paul has teased it. The last person that I remember doing it was Seth Rollins, who had both the world title and the U.S. championship at that time. So, shout out to Logan Paul, who kind of has been teasing the idea. But I really would like to see Gunther make a run with Seth's title and his Intercontinental title. But ultimately, if I had to pick someone on the roster right now that he was going to drop it to at WrestleMania, I think the most emotional high that you can reach would be with Sami Zayn ultimately dethroning Gunther, especially if you had Kevin Owens kind of entangle himself and get involved to back up Sami against Imperium. I think that would add, again, another interesting angle to the feud. And then, maybe Gunther really takes it out on Imperium after he loses the title at WrestleMania, and maybe that sets up an Imperium feud, which is something that I've kind of had interest in. But at the same time, the problem is I don't know if Da Vinci, or whatever his name is, can really float on his own the way that I really see I just see a future for Ludwig Kaiser is what it is, and I would really like to see him kind of branch off on his own and maybe get a little bit more shine. Right now, obviously, he under Gunther's thumb, he can only go so far. So maybe I would like to see something evolve there with Ludwig and Gunther. But ultimately, I would be fine also just watching Imperium stick together and be dominant through the next couple of years. So we saw the new beginning of NJPW, New Japan Pro Wrestling, has featured an American invasion. You had both Matt Riddle and Nick Nemeth, aka Dolph Ziggler, become new champions respectively in their matches at NJPW's most recent event, A New Beginning. I watched both matches. I thought they were good matches. You know, not barn burner 5-star classics by any means, but definitely really solid quality matches. I especially liked actually Nick Nemeth versus David Finlay. I thought that match definitely carried more weight. As much as I like Tanahashi and Matt Riddle, Matt Riddle, I'll talk about Matt Riddle first, because ultimately, I mean, Nick Nemeth, there isn't as much to say about it, so my real focus here is on Matt Riddle. And it's funny because when I was kind of researching the segment, it's like I realized like he sort of almost is doing what I would want to see from Matt Riddle at this point in his career. But, I mean, is Matt Riddle the Nicolas Cage of the wrestling world? Because this guy is one note. Like, the bro stuff has got to go. I am so sick of this shit. I know that it's, like, reflective of his true personality, and normally in wrestling, that's what you want, is someone who is taking their own personality and turning it up to 11. But, man, it's just so old and tired, and being a more aggressive bro, I don't know. The promo didn't really like do it for me. He's kind of got that look to him still of like, I just can't take you seriously under any context. I really feel he needs like a full overhaul, and I think a full heel run would do him wonders. I would love to see him do some stuff maybe with like Bullet Club, if he could maybe squeeze his way in with David Finlay and that crew. That's just kind of like a look that I think would do well for a Matt Riddle. I would love to see him just do something really drastic, like cut the hair and put some fucking shoes on, and it's like, take yourself more seriously so that the audience will take you more seriously. He's a tremendous in-ring competitor. I just want to put that out there. I think Matt Riddle is fantastic in the ring, but I'm just tired of the bro shtick and the variations of. And to have carried that with you all the way to New Japan Pro Wrestling, literally to another continent, I just think is silly and kind of ridiculous. So I would really love to see if he expands on the kind of potential heel work going forward, if maybe he just fully gets away from the bro stuff. I think there's a lot of potential there for him to actually, discern a true character besides just this 420 bro shit. It's I almost hate it's funny because it's like I almost hate stoner movies where I always think of like Smiley Face with Anna Faris, but like stoner movies where the person smoking weed is like so ridiculously stupid that it's just like shtick. Like, it's not even believable at that point. It's bad acting, it's bad comedy, and it's lazy, and it's just not even reflective of the truth. I've been smoking bongs all day, and I'm having this conversation with y'all. Like, smoking weed just, it doesn't dumb you down to the point of all you can fucking say is, bro. And, just shout out to Nick Nemeth. I think obviously he is just such a tremendous in-ring competitor. Danger Zone aside, Danger Zone. I low-key hate his finish, the Danger Zone, aka the zigzag. Again, bringing kind of like an old sticking point with you all the way across to another continent. That's something I would have liked to see him actually abandon. And he's such an awesome and tremendous wrestler. Like, dude, I'm sure in all of this time you could have came up with like some sick finisher. And yet I'm still watching you. It's just I don't know. It's so shitty. It's like a backwards bulldog, basically. It's the suspension of belief for me. It's just like you go through the match and you're beating the hell out of each other, and I'm supposed to believe that you jumped up and grabbed his head and just kind of like slammed it on. Like you were literally slamming his face into a metal gate and a ring post and an exposed turnbuckle, and none of that got the job done. But just a standard. Oh, I jumped up and I caught him and I slammed him on the mat. 1, 2, 3. I need more. Give me more. Alex Shelley appeared on Busted Open Radio, and he talked about Scott D'Amore's departure as TNA president. He was fired, it seems like, is the appropriate term. He was let go. Though seemingly the language coming from Anthem seems like it was on mutual terms almost to a degree. So maybe more will come out eventually about the story. But for now, as it seems, kind of surprisingly and out of the blue, Scott D'Amore, the TNA president, who had been doing an excellent job carrying them through the rebranding from Impact to TNA, was let go. And, Alex Shelley, like I mentioned, appeared on Busted Open Radio, talked about, from a backstage perspective and from the wrestler's point of view, that obviously was very disappointing for a lot of the wrestlers who felt like Scott D'Amore was, a father figure, a role model, and I think also because he was, a manager and kind of previously involved in the wrestling world, was maybe more familiar with some of what they go through, especially on like a travel schedule arrangement. And, when you're at that bottom end of the totem pole and you kind of work your way up through the business, I feel like you have a better understanding of the actual pro wrestling industry. Whereas now it seems like Anthem is shifting in another direction. Not to say that the new president is not understanding of wrestling culture, but maybe isn't quite as in tune as a Scott D'Amore. So just from the outside looking in, the way that it seems to me, Anthem Sports and Entertainment, which is a Canadian-based company actually, they're based out of Toronto, Canada, they had hired Scott, and looking into Scott D'Amore's background, he's a Windsor, Ontario native, graduated from the University of Windsor with a degree in communication studies, and like I mentioned, has an understanding of the wrestling industry very much from kind of an in-ring perspective, and I think that really made him great at his job in terms of managing the various personalities that exist within a wrestling company. And I think that's a very underrated feature, obviously, of the president's roles and responsibilities. Now, it seems like Anthem is wanting to shift away from, again, a father figure, role model type leader of the company. And, maybe this is just my perspective, but the replacement, the new president, Anthony Siccione, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, so apologies if I'm not. He kind of comes off as like a slick executive type, though necessarily it's not the same thing here in Canada, admittedly. But there is a little bit of that, I think. He kind of has a background very much in media. He has 16 years experience as kind of a production suit, with various responsibilities. He did obviously work his way up, and it's not to say that his role is undeserved, but he's been with Anthem for a long time, and he's been in the industry in general for something like 30 years. And his role is much more macro than micro, right? So I think the shift from Anthem's perspective is, and this is why it's weird that they fired Scott Demore, because, and sometimes this happens in a company where it's like you feel like you can't demote a person, or maybe they won't accept that, and so you are left with no alternative but to fire them. And I think maybe that was the misstep or the mistake. I don't know if maybe you could have just created a separate role for Mr. Ciccione, who has taken over as the president, because what he was responsible for primarily, his big feather in the cap, mark on the resume, was that he was primarily responsible back in the day for helping bring WWE to the Score, which in Canada is like a big sports network. He's very much responsible for the mainstreaming of WWE in Canada on sports networks, primarily through, again, that affiliation. And this was a while back, but it's just to say that he, from a macro perspective, is maybe more what the company Anthem is looking for in terms of someone to manage the actual TV production deals and that aspect of the business, versus Scott Demore, who is maybe better suited to, again, more of the micro roles and responsibilities and perspectives of managing the inner workings of the company. So I don't know if maybe they should have considered some kind of split role, whether that's having, a co-president, a vice president, creating a new vice president role for Ciccione and leaving Scott Demore in place, or even, again, perhaps going to Scott Demore and saying, we would like to keep you on as a vice president. Your roles and day-to-day responsibilities ultimately won't change, but we would like to add Anthony to kind of emphasize and take care of and increase the production of our TV deals and, that aspect of our growth. So I think that's kind of where that move is coming from. And obviously, it creates a potential power struggle anytime you have a huge change in management like that. But ultimately, I think as fans, we just have to let it play out. I don't think it will really change that much in terms of the day-to-day booking of the show. That's, again, not really the role that I think the new president has been hired to fill. And I think maybe that's why, to the surprise of the fans, because it felt like Scott Demore was doing such a great job, that, again, maybe he wasn't what they were looking for in that specific role. And, they acknowledged that he did a great job, and it's not necessarily that he did anything wrong, but they obviously wanted to bring in their own guy who they feel is an expert in, more creating, again, the mainstream public relations that eventually help, increase profitability for the shareholders, because ultimately that's capitalism. That's what everything comes down to these days. We'll get into some fan questions before we get on out of here. I wrote these ones today, inspired by Elimination Chamber. Waiting for you guys, my EVPs out there, to send me some questions. So we'll start off with, what is your favorite Elimination Chamber match ever? For me personally, there's a lot to choose from. I really enjoyed the one with Goldberg and Triple H when they were having their feud. Goldberg destroying everybody in the Elimination Chamber, putting people through the pods. That was kind of the beginning of when they would do that. So that was a great spot. There was the really funny spot when Ric Flair is trying to hold the door closed on Goldberg so that he can't get to Triple H, and Goldberg kicks through the pod. So that Elimination Chamber I remember being really, really good. And then Triple H winning with the sledgehammer that he kind of sneaks through the chain link. Just, again, classic heel Triple H. So that was a great one. The first one ever when Shawn Michaels won the title, that was a great one too. But my favorite, and I was there in the theater because they used to show it at, well, they still show it at Cineplex Theaters in Canada, the PLEs, I'm pretty sure. But I was 16 years old, I think. I went with a couple buddies to watch New Year's Revolution because they had the Elimination Chamber for the first time. We were all very excited. And John Cena was in that period of his career where people were really starting to turn on him. This was like the beginning of people really booing John Cena and hating John Cena because it was just ridiculous. It was the LOL Cena wins time period where he was just winning every single match. And so he starts the Elimination Chamber, gets bloodied, goes through the whole damn thing, wins the Elimination Chamber. And I remember feeling the visceral disappointment from especially my buddy Dave. Shout out to you, Dave. He just was upset. And then Vince McMahon comes out and Edge comes out with the Money in the Bank briefcase. And he cashes in, and there's that moment. They tease the moment of Cena's going to defend even the cash-in, but no, Edge gets him, wins the title, and basically forever alters the course of wrestling history in terms of how the Money in the Bank cash-in could and would be used, going forward. So that, to me, was my favorite Elimination Chamber match of all time. The next question: what is your favorite stipulation match type? For me, I have a personal love of TLC, tables, ladders, and chairs matches. Obviously, the WrestleMania 17 TLC match with Edge and Christian, the Hardy Boys, and the Dudley Boys will live on in infamy. Especially, they always show it in all the trailers. Edge spearing Jeff Hardy as he's holding on to the titles 15 feet above the ring. I mean, I remember watching that live. That, again, was fantastic. But, man, TLC, I remember when they just threw a random TLC match together on SmackDown one time when Chris Jericho and Chris Benoit were the tag champs back then. So that was actually a really fun match. And just TLC in general, obviously always really fun matches. And shout out WeLC to me is the funniest match that has ever been put together in any kind of production. My daughter, it's her favorite match of all time. WeLC with what was it, like Weebie? Oh, JB Small. That's what it is. JB Small, Jerry the Mini King Lawler, Micro Cole. Literally all the puns, they were bringing out the small ladder, the small chair, everything was just hysterical. That's one of my favorite matches of all time. And fantasy book your current day greatest Elimination Chamber that you could put together. So for me, I mean, I think my initial gut reaction for the men's Elimination Chamber was to go very power mode. Big destruction. I started thinking of names like Braun Strowman and Roman Reigns and Goldberg and even Brock Lesnar. But no, I want combination of acrobatics and strength, and I want pure wrestling. So my fantasy Elimination Chamber for the Intercontinental Championship held by Gunther, who will be participating in the match, will feature Ricochet, Cesaro, Bryan Danielson, Will Ospreay, and Braun Breaker. And if it was me booking the match, I would have Braun Breaker go over Gunther as the final two and just like, you know, really just have a crazy all-out like 60-minute Elimination Chamber where, you know, you're pacing the elimination. It takes a lot to eliminate a guy, and you get it down to Braun Breaker and Gunther and just let them have 10-minute solo match basically in the chamber for the title. Oh my fuck. That would literally be like the greatest Elimination Chamber match of all time. And then on the women's side, if it was me, I would do Bianca. This is where I'd put all the power. I want Bianca Belair. I want Jade Cargill. I want Nia Jax. I want Raquel Gonzalez. I want Jordan Grace. And I want Rhea Ripley. And I want all of those powerful women to just rip the fucking cage down to the shreds. That is it for me today. I hope you guys have enjoyed the show. Make sure that you super kick that subscribe button. Go ahead and drop kick us some comments. And of course, send in your fan questions, your ideas for the show. I want you guys to help me grow this. I want your support. But I want to do it from an organic fashion. You know, I'm not going to just go off and start doing random shit. I really want this to be grassroots. So please go ahead, send in your fan questions either to the fantasyjoker420@gmail.com or hit me up on all of my socials at Jack Lucene on Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, what have you. And you know what? I will catch all you guys on the flip side.
My positive contact results in affirmative impact. Never polarized on raps. I'm never primitive, but cannibalistic, vicious characteristics, hereditary potency, episodic genes, yo. Empathy, HMCs at extraordinary speed. Some of me is like slipping in razor blades and grease in your bare feet. I see your fucking colleagues misprize you very much to your dismay. So today, I can say you won't be running away. Hold your tail between your legs. I'm gonna advocate when you fail below stakes. I'll take a hacksaw to you cockeyed, mumble rap, slack jaws. Leave you shredded on the side like some coleslaw. The double time with the clothesline from hell like Bradshaw. I'm toxic like septic shock. A dying breed.